Already. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends on where you live. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar is 5 key capabilities for implementing real-time analytics. And we have Dr. Prashanth Southekal and Anish Muppalaneni joining us. So let's get started. First of all, I'll start with Prashanth. Prashanth, you've been to our webinars a couple of times now. So, but for the benefit of our new audiences, can you give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lee. Thanks for hosting me. And hi, Anish. Glad to be part of this webinar with you. Yeah, so basically, I do. I play the role of a consultant, an author, and a professor. I have, as part of my consulting engagement, I have consulted for close to 80 different companies, including big ones as well as some small companies. But overall, the challenge has been the same, whether it's big or small. How do we get value out of data and analytics? That's a challenge all these companies have got. And as part of this, what I have seen is the biggest enabler for change or getting results from data and analytics is actually education. So education has been the biggest enabler for getting value out of data and analytics. And that's where I play my other roles, where I've written these 2 books related to data and analytics. And I'm also a professor of data analytics at IE Business School in Madrid, Spain. In fact, if this webinar had happened next week, I would have been talking from Madrid instead of Calgary. That's what I do. I'm based in Calgary, as I just mentioned, in Canada. And looking forward for this webinar and all the great questions and interactions.
Great. And I just want to let the audience know, actually, Prashanth has a 3rd book coming out in March, right?
Yeah, so it's a 3rd book on data quality. We'll talk about that book as well if there is an opportunity here, which is on the importance of why quality data really matters in real-time analytics and generally for improved operations and compliance as well. Yeah.
Yep. Look forward to that new book as well. Thank you, Prashanth. Anish, this is your first time joining our webinars, so maybe you can give our audience a quick introduction about yourself and your company.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the talk show, Lee, and nice meeting you, Prashanth. Read so many things about you online before this. Glad to see you in person and have a conversation with you here. Hi everyone. I live in Bay Area, San Francisco. I'm an engineer by background. I've been in the space, in the deep data space for a while, a bit more than 10 years, working for different set of companies of all sizes. I spent quite a bit of time at Airbnb, where I led teams working on ML infrastructure. We built very complex data pipelines to extract meaning from data, use that in ML models, and to use that to ultimately stop fraud. In fraud, we had to act in real time. Many people create fake accounts, fake listings, fake messages, spam, all of that. And you have to stop that at the point of sending. So real-time analytics are very, very important for that. And I spent most of my time at Airbnb working on improving our pipelines to optimize the whole experience. After that, I spent some time in other startups, and more recently I was at Facebook, where my teams are working on machine learning models for detecting signals in videos and images to stop fraud, as well as recommendations and stuff like that. Currently, we are a 7-person team. I'm the founder of ngram. We are building blockchain analytics. For those of you who know blockchains, it's a pretty big data problem. There is so much of data on blockchains today. There are easily like 20 to 30 important blockchains out there, and indexing all of that, extracting meaningful insights from all of the data is a pretty daunting task. Yeah, and we are making it easy for data analysts and data creators and developers to have that whole infra outlined for them, and they can easily come to ngram and access whatever data questions they have in an easy, intuitive manner.
Great. Yeah, now you're building some very exciting blockchain analytics. And your company's website is?
ngram.com.
ngram.com.
We're a pretty small team. We are 7 engineers right now spread around the world, but we are growing fast.
Yep, great. And we're glad to be part of the journey.
Yeah, we love all the interactions with the StarRocks. So love to be part of this.
Okay, so first question I'll start with Prashanth. Prashanth, you recently wrote a blog about real-time analytics, right? And you talked about the 5 enablers. So in that framework, I think the first one enabler, you mentioned the data culture. Specifically, you talked about focus on measurements. So can you shed some light on that, specifically for real-time analytics, right? What should we measure and why does that matter?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lee. So but basically, before I go to the data culture part of it, I just want to give a little bit of a context and a background about real-time analytics. So when we talk about real-time analytics, the better word would be the near real-time analytics, where we are trying to minimize the latency associated with the data ingestion into the data warehouse and the querying thing from the data so that you can derive insights quickly. So overall, when we talk about real-time analytics and the technical aspect and the solution part of it, it's about how do you minimize the latency so that you can quickly derive the insights from the available data and use that insights to make better decisions. Because in today's VUCA world, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, so a delayed decision is practically a bad decision. So there's no, say if somebody gives you a decision which after the opportunity is gone, there's no point in having an insight because because opportunity is practically expired. So that's the context which I want to give about the timeliness, the importance of reliable and accurate insights to make good decisions. So now coming back to your point, Lee, about the data culture. So it's about so many people, when I talk about data culture, they think, oh, this is more about a fluffy stuff, which is how can we measure it? How can we do it? And so on and so forth. So in my view, to build a data culture, you have to focus on 2 major things. The first one is about having a service culture. So what does this mean, Prashanth? This basically means putting your consumer or your customer in the center of everything you do. Okay, great. We have heard this 1,000,000 times. How is it tied to? How it is tied to data and analytics? Because to serve your customers or your stakeholders, you need a reliable point of reference, and that reliable point of reference comes from data. So when you talk about service orientation, service culture, you need a reliable point of reference, and that can come from data. So that's number 1. So focus on your customer, focus on providing the service to your customer. So people say, Prashanth, I'm in HR, I never talk to customers. So a customer doesn't have to be somebody who pays money for your product and services. Anybody whom you serve is your customer. So if you are in HR, it could be your employees with whom you're serving. So treat everybody in your company with the intention to serve, whether it's an external customer or your employees. That's number 1. Next, number 2 is all about measurement, which you just mentioned now. So why do we need analytics? What is the purpose of analytics? So I tell my clients and prospects, the main purpose of analytics is about measurement and performance improvement. If you don't believe in that concept of measuring and improving your performance, forget about analytics. There's no point in talking about all this cloud, this Power BI, and even StarRocks or all those things. So if you have to believe in measurement and performance improvement, because if you don't have that kind of a mindset, then you are not going very far with your with data analytics, including real-time analytics. So overall, when I talk about data culture, what is it I tell my prospects? 2 things. Where are you treating your customers? Do you put your customers in the center of everything you do? Number 1. If the answer is yes, now the next question is, how do you believe in measurement and performance improvement? If the answer is yes, you are well positioned to get value out of data and analytics.
Yeah, that's a great setup context, and especially I like your point about the internal customers and external customers. Right, a lot of times analytics is servicing internal customers, but actually more and more business are bringing these capabilities to external customers as well. So how if the whether the infrastructure can support that kind of external customers, that'll be an interesting point.
Yeah.
So great. So Anish, maybe let us know from your standpoint, right? Crypto currency analytics, blockchain analytics. What does that real time and timeliness data mean? What does it mean to you or to your business?
Yeah. First of all, I want to +1 to what Prashanth said. I have worked with hundreds to thousands of engineers, data engineers, and decision makers consuming data. Nobody ever complains of their data being fast. Everybody wants data to be super duper fast, right? Nobody is like, I wish my data is a bit more slow. No, nobody wants that. Everyone wants to know instantly what's happening in their business with slow slowness, very fast ingestion, as well as very fast query time. In coming to blockchains or crypto analytics, I'll separate that into two parts. One is on the ingestion side, how fast we can get the data into the warehouse so that you can consume it later. If you think more on the trading side, the financial trading side of cryptocurrencies and crypto tokens, that is where even a nanosecond to a millisecond counts a lot more, because you are up ahead of everybody else in your trading game. That's where like more of the hedge funds and all these other companies operate in, where high frequency trading, it's super duper important to have very, very fast data where you are knowing the prices of your tokens, the volume of exchange flow, inflows and outflows. That is very, very important. We focus more on the product analytics side, like protocol analytics side, where it's we give you deeper insights about how a specific protocol is doing in terms of the user engagement, in terms of the volume of interactions, the number of messages sent, all of that. That is more on the product side. Even there, you want to know when a user, if a user has issues with login on the website, you want to be notified instantly that there is a bug here. You don't want users to come back to your customer support channel and tell you that, hey, I'm being blocked on that. That's already too late. Having this sort of like aggregate analytics where you can see a high-level picture of your business in near real time with like few minutes up to like few seconds of latency on the ingestion side is super duper helpful in proactively identifying these issues before they do happen. When I was at Airbnb, we built a pipeline in-house. We had this huge customer issue problem where you were traveling, you went to your home you have a host, you went to your home and then you're trying to check in, but then you have an issue with check-in. You contact customer support. But if your website are having issues, then more and more people who are traveling will contact customer supports, and they are waiting outside in their homes trying to get in. That's a very bad experience. We try to figure out what can we do to improve that detection of like customer support issues and all. We built a huge pipeline in-house where we pull out tags and then notify customer support agents that, hey, like there are thousands of you people working on these. We are seeing that there is an issue with logins. Do you think there is a login issue? And then agents can practically see that, oh, this is related to the site issue. So let me like flag that to the engineers and then they can work on it right away. So that like having that end-to-end pipeline of customers reporting it to you and then customer support agents seeing that there's an issue and then users talking about engineers fixing it, that is already delayed. Instead, you want it to be very simple where user is having problem on the site. They don't even go through customer support, but you practically alert engineers and then they come back and fix it. Real-time analytics really help us to really like get to that state of like being ahead of users' game in flagging their problems. On the other side of consumption, where the query latency matters a lot, if your queries are taking few hours to few minutes, it's very hard for you to push the team internally to consume data more and more often. People don't want to be waiting like on their queries like to take hours and hours. You already like lose meaning by the time the query finishes. You want your queries to be instant and fast. We ran a bunch of experiments when I was working at Airbnb again, where you want to improve everybody in the company, like every like non-engineering, non-product people in the company to be more and more better at using data. The single best thing that you can do to make it happen is making your queries run super duper fast. Everybody wants instant answers. Nobody wants to use in the days of TikTok, you all want like this like super fast, very, very delightful experiences, and you just need to get the dopamine very, very fast. And fast queries will help you get there. And yeah, that's both on the ingestion as well as query side. The faster it is, the whole experience gets much better for users, both internal as well as external users, to consume data and be more data driven in their decisions.
Great. Thanks for sharing your experience at both Airbnb and ngram. And I love your comment about the nobody complains about data being too fast, right? And I think you brought up a great point that there are two aspects of real-time analytics, right? The data ingestion side as well as the query speed side, right? Both are almost equally important, right? You can't have just one of them. And actually, Prashanth, you talked about this in your previous blogs and webinars, right? The data delay and the query delay, right? I think those are terms you used. So I would like to hear your opinion on that. The data from the data capture and data ingestion side, right? The from the organization standpoint, right? What should they pay attention to and be aware of?
Yeah. when Anish was talking about the days of instant access where people want insights quickly, I just reminded of some statistic which I read recently is about the attention deficit people have these days. So the people they say that the research by Princeton or Cornell, one of these Ivy League universities, they say that an average person these days has just about 8 seconds of time to look at a particular thing. So we just have very less, we are constrained with time these days. So we okay. So that thing apart, so so to your point, Lee. So, about the main thing is about getting good quality data for analytics. So many people ask me, what is this quality data? How do you define this? It is very abstract. There are hundreds of definitions and everything. So I tell them that quality data is tied to the purpose for which you need that data to run your business. So now my question to all the people in the webinar is, type your answers in the chat. Tell me why businesses need data. Why companies are capturing data? Type your answers in the chat box. Would love to hear your perspectives. I hope they can type it. Type your answers in the chat box. Why do companies capture data? What would happen if data is not there in a company? What would they lose? To make informed decisions. Very good. I see one from Tyler, which is all about real-time analytics. Okay, what else?
You need to repeat the question because people have only 8 seconds of attention span.
That's a good one. Okay, so Tyler, that's fine. That's good. What else? Is it just to make decisions? I'll just wait for another 8 seconds before I reveal my answer. Okay, good. So basically, I agree with Tyler to make informed decisions. But decision making is not just the main purpose why companies capture data. So in my upcoming book on data quality, which is going to be published by Wiley, I've said 3 reasons why companies need data. Number 1 is to run their business operations. Say you want to issue a purchase order, you want to clear an invoice, so on and so forth. So all those documents are required to run your operations. That's number 1. Next, number 2, it's for compliance. Like a purchase order, it's used to run the operations because you want to know how many orders are coming, how many were rejected, so on and so forth. But a purchase order is also a compliance document. If something goes wrong between you and the vendor, you rely on the purchase order because to see what this agreement is all about. And the third thing, which is what Tyler just said, it's about decision making. So basically, data is required for 3 main reasons: operations, compliance, and decision making. So when going back to Lee's question, what is quality data? So in my view, a quality data is one which can help you address these 3 main reasons, which is operations, compliance, and decision making. But when we looked at the situation around, when I talk to my clients and prospects, when I talk to many people in the industry, the data quality is very poor. So just last week, I did a study and I asked people, especially in people in Canada, for instance, who participated in the survey, and Canada and Dubai, basically the 2 geographies who participated in the survey, how do you rank the level of data quality in the company? So 68% of them said the level of, they would give a score of under 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, the level of data quality in the company. So imagine almost like 3/4 of them are saying that the data quality levels are very bad. That means less than 50%, which is pathetic. And just 10% of them, they said it is more than 75%. That means they would give a score of 75 on 100 when it comes to data quality. So it's a pretty much same story. There's been a lot of articles written in Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, Gartner, and all those companies which are saying that the data quality levels are very poor. Okay, good. Now, what's the solution, Prashanth? What do you have? Well, Lee has asked this a very interesting question. So what is the solution to improve data quality? So again, in my book, I've talked about 10 best practices to improve data quality. But in the interest of time, I'll pick the 3 most important ones so that you can get some value out of this webinar as well. The first one is profile the data. Understand the data so that you get to know where you are currently standing, so that you can draw a roadmap. This is what you want to do, so on and so forth. So the first one is look at the data, understand all, run all this exploratory descriptive analytics and get to know the data well. And especially focus on transactional data, because that's where the rubber hits the road. The transaction has got compliance, it has got operational, so on and so forth. That's number one. Next, number two, follow the minimalistic approach to data quality. So, or data capture. So don't just capture data because somebody said data is oil, data is blood, and all those things. That's all good. These are all like metaphors and rhetorics. So the main thing that matters, why you need data, is for those three reasons which we discussed earlier: operations, compliance, and decision making. If you are capturing data outside these three main reasons, you have to really think hard. Do I really need the data to run my business, or for compliance, or for decision making? So minimalistic approach to data capture. So there is a research which is done by Carnegie Mellon and IBM. They say that 90% of the data in a company is dark data, that means unused data. So imagine you are spending so much of time and effort in capturing the data, and 90% of them is never used. That's very sad. That's very shameful that you are not using those data at all. So I wrote a Forbes blog also on that, on illuminating dark data. So you can read that later on what you can do to reduce the dark data footprint in your company. And the third one is build good integration capabilities. Say, what are your capabilities, especially if you look at real-time analytics, how do you bring the data to the data warehouse? Why, Prashanth? Why are you talking about integration? Because the data quality or the data integrity pretty much gets jeopardized when the data moves. When the data moves from your transactional systems to the data warehouse, the integrity is lost. The reference to the metadata model is compromised, so on and so forth. So when the data moves, there is a huge risk of data quality. So spare some thought on data integration. Look at the different mechanisms which you use. In my blog, which is in Seller Data's website, I talked about 4 characteristics where you can apply to bring the right integration capabilities. So you can read that and talk about different strategies, so on and so forth. So in interest of time, this is a great question, very big question on data quality. So I would say to build a good data quality framework in your company, understand your data, just capture data tied to your business purpose. And number 3, make sure that you have good data integration capabilities, especially on decision making and analytics, if you're bringing the data from your transactional systems to the data warehouse.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Prashanth. Great insight. Now, Anish, I would like to hear from your standpoint, right? You're dealing with tons of blockchain data, and what's your best practice in terms of data collection and ingestion?
Yeah, this is a huge topic, Lee. It's where people spend their whole lives, and as you can imagine, Prashanth is also writing a book about it. So it's a pretty open-ended problem and very complex, and it's very situational depending on the company that you are in, the stack that you have, the sort of talent and people that you have. But I can tell I've worked in many companies with both big and small data, and in my current company, ngram, where we have petabytes of data on blockchains sitting out there, and we are processing all of that and ingesting into our platform. So it's a pretty daunting task, and I can tell like maybe a few highlights from my observations on what we are doing today. On the data collection side, having a clear source of like collection, as in like your data is in different places, how are you pulling that together? How are you identifying the data? How are you tagging that? How are you governing the inputs? There are few things that I learned. In case of blockchains, much of data stored on the blockchains is very structured. So there's a clear format. It's all encoded, but there's a clear format on what you can expect the data to behave and how the format should be. But we also do, in addition to blockchains, also do a lot of off-chain data, which we basically the real-world data, collecting from websites, publicly available data sets and stuff like that. Everyone has their own formats. There are data gaps. There are missing schemas. So it's a bit of a shit show out there with data. Collecting all of that and putting it in a format that is a bit more unionized, it's a bit more understandable, where you can make sense of it easily with proper schemas and stuff. That's pretty hard. You need to have a very good like this governance mechanism where somebody is like spending time to design the schemas right, to understand how to structure the data properly, so that you're not doing this task of collecting data again and again. Once you start the process, it will take a few months for you to actually like get this going. You don't want to come back to that and spend time again and again. So take your time to carefully think through where all of your data is coming from, how to connect all of those pieces. It's worth the effort. And like Prashanth said, don't over collect data. It's very easy for people to think, oh, we might need this data, let me store it somewhere. but trust me, you will never get to it. Whenever you need data, you can always go back and collect it from the open world. But if there are instances where it depends on source of truth, right? If you are the source of truth, if somebody is sending you data, and if you have to, you have to. But if there is a copy available elsewhere, don't touch it unless you really need it. It slows everything down when you're making copies or migrations or like adding more nodes, just like unnecessary load that you have to carry again and again. So don't collect unnecessary data. On the ingestion side, once I have figured out these are all the data that I want to in my systems, how do I think about getting that into my disk, into my platform? This is where a lot of data engineering comes into play. The modern data stack is evolving at a very fast speed. I'm sure like many of you have heard of DBT like tools, where we are in the olden days, it is all like very bespoke ad hoc, right? Like somebody comes in, right, executes a create table statement in the warehouse or Hadoop layer, and nobody can repeat that ever. So it's all like mishmash of things. But now these days we have proper like coding where you can check in DBT like Terraform like tools available, where you can have pretty good idempotency, where you run an operation and you can rerun that again with confidence that it will not spoil things, and you can repeatedly get the same behavior by running it multiple times. Having that sort of idempotency is very, very important. One key common thing with data pipelines, everybody who worked in data knows, is like they fail all the time. There is some issue somewhere. There is a data corruption. There is a data format issue. There is a network error. There is a disk error. There is an engineering error where they wrote a bad query. The only common thing in all data pipelines is that they all fail every day. So having this sort of good pipelines which are repeatable, which can get to the data that you want with good confidence, focusing on that and building those pipelines is very, very important. And second thing is having good observability. Things do fail. That's you try your best to have them pass all the time. But when they do fail, you need to be notified right away. You need to know what to do. If you have a multi-person engineering team, make sure your knowledge is not staying in one engineer's mind. Make sure it's documented somewhere so that somebody else can be able to come in and then repeat the steps if the other engineer is sleeping. Having a good on-call process around the run books for how to get these pipelines back up and running, and the way to notify even downstream users that there is an issue with the pipeline. So like having a clear status page on how your pipelines are performing, how the data, what is the health of your data, all of that is very, very important. And the third one I would add is around batch loading versus live loading, especially when you talk about real-time analytics. In the olden days, we have this batch load, like a nightly job runs every night. It copies all the data from production databases into analytical databases overnight, and then you have like 24-hour delay before you can actually get new data again. But in real world, more and more so everyone is moving into real-time analytics, where you have batch pipelines for sure, but as the things happen in the day on transactional databases, you have hourly or even minutely jobs that copy from transaction into analytical databases. So have a separate plan or maybe a unified plan for loading both batch as well as live. You don't want to run into a scenario where your batch load copies data in one format, but your live load changes the format and overwrites the different thing, or actually writes wrong data. That will like make you all go crazy. So ideally, if you have a unified SQL for both pipelines, that's amazing. It's very hard to do that, but if you can get to that state, that's the ideal consequence where you don't have to worry about data issues, data corruption errors anymore. Yeah, I would say those are like the top things that comes to my mind, but I'm sure like there are a lot more that Prashanth will uncover in his book.
Yeah, no, great. I'm sure the data engineering practitioners here on the webinar learn a lot. And I especially like your last comment about the batch load and live load, right? Having a unified architecture is going to be very helpful. That one engine can process both batch analytics and the real-time analytics, right? Can greatly simplify the effort. So
that's I would say the holy grail of data engineering. The data engineering as a space like exists since like 1960s and 70s, like BI, right? That's how it got started. Yep. It evolved over time, and again, there is always constant change. There's a lot of innovation happening. I think we're finally reaching this like ultimate tipping point where you have like one thing that works for both live load and batch load, and it makes so many people's lives so much easier. Hopefully, we'll get there soon.
Well, there's also, the data engineering side and then different data platform, right? Platform keeps evolving, and then data engineering need to catch up, right? So it's always, it's fun, but it's also a challenge. So I totally agree with you. Cool. So now we talked about a lot about the best practices, and let's take a look at from a tools and technology standpoint, right? Prashanth, I will start with you again. Just looking at different tools and technologies, what's your observations? The major challenges that you have seen with in your practices.
Yeah. No, so if I had to look at any provider who is talking about real-time analytics, there are a few questions I would ask this provider. Do you have those kind of features or capabilities so that so including StarRocks, whether it's a good solution or whatever it is. So the first thing is, let's look at the concept of denormalization. So when we talk about, and we discussed, Lee, you also mentioned about the query latency and the data latency. So we are talking about data warehouses these days. The good thing about data warehouses is it denormalizes your normalized data, which is part of your system of record or the transactional system, and makes it like a flat table so that you can improve your query performance. So great. So you get faster results from a flat table. But the flip side is that there is number one, there is a lot of redundant data because you are duplicating those tables. That's number one. Next, number two, you are also creating, there is an issue of data integrity because the integral part of it, which was part of the system of record, it's been compromised because you are making everything flat and so on and so forth. That's number two. And next, number three, the data is not timely in nature because there is a lag between the data that has been originated to the time that is being captured. In fact, I even wrote in the blog, they say that 60% of the value of data is lost by the time it is captured. So imagine somebody has got a thought in his mind, and by the time that data is actually captured, the 60% of the value is lost. So imagine, we don't want to lose that value further, right? We have to leverage it and reduce that time so that we can salvage the value as much as possible. Okay, so that's for one aspect which I'm looking for is what capabilities do you have so that you can kind of minimize or even eliminate the denormalized tables which we have. So if the solution talks about, okay, tablets or decomposing the table and all those kind of things, so that means that we have an interesting solution to talk about. But that's not the only part of it. We also have to leverage other capabilities we have on the technology front. The other thing which I would also ask this provider is, what about this parallel processing? We talk about MPP these days. Do you talk about efficiently using the system resources, query processing performance, so on and so forth? So that's number two. So that's also, if the provider says yes, that we have those capabilities, then it's like I get more confidence. The third one is about all the things which has to do with the computer and the CPUs, which is about the column storage and all those kind of things, so that you can improve the IO stuff and query performance and all those things. So that's number three. The fourth thing is also about change, which is about, can I do all those things without jeopardizing how my existing and the concurrent users are using with their existing BI tools, with their existing SQL and all those things. So I don't want to achieve all those things and then piss off my users who are working in a particular fashion. So the change management part of it is also very important, where I have to take care. So that would be the fourth thing, is about what about better scalability, intelligent views, and so on and so forth. So there could be many things, but these are the top few items which I would look in a platform. Probably Anish can answer more on this, on what he looks as a practitioner to when he talks about real-time analytics solutions.
Yeah, Anish, maybe you can share some of your inputs on that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how much of context many of you have on blockchains. I don't want to go much deeper into blockchains. I'll try to keep it a bit high level on blockchains. But the way that we write and read data in blockchains is a bit different from normal databases. In normal transactional databases, we write to them and then we read right away. But in blockchains, the way consensus works, there is a delay before you can read the data. You cannot read it right away because it's geographically everywhere. So that's a bit of a challenge for us in terms of like, how do you consume data efficiently? The one thing we have seen in blockchains is that there's lots and lots of data. Ingesting that at these distributed around the world sort of like nodes, it's very hard. The copies that you see of data are changing time to time. What is the latest transaction? If you ask, it's different depending on the node that you talk to. So there are a bunch of like these quality issues around how can you pick and how can you collect all of the data. When we are looking into like ngram to pick our like analytics engine for the backend. We looked at a bunch of options. There are a few requirements that we are very clear on, like these are things that we want out of our analytics engine. The first thing, primary thing we really care about is the open source nature of the platform. That is very important and near and dear to our heart. Being a decentralized platform, we want it to be a community-driven product where if the company that's operating behind that goes away, the community can still run it. We can still make improvements to that. We can know what's happening behind the scenes, and we can all collaborate together and make it much better. We really believe in that ethos of open source. The other thing that we're looking for is like more of functional requirements around how we want the data to be processed and accessed. Few requirements around having a fast load of batch data. We started ngram 4 months ago, very new company, very young company, but blockchains have been in existence for more than 7-8 years now. So there's a lot of data out there that we have to process for us to provide some value to our users. So you need to be able to ingest like 10 years worth of data into our platforms like within a few months and process that. And some platform which can handle all of that very easily is something that we really wanted. And again, going back to the nature of blockchains, we run into the scenarios called forks where a write is not actually final. Sometimes it gets reverted. So there are always frequent updates to the data that does happen. And we need to be able to like collect all of that and ingest that into the platform and be able to upset for any deletes or for any writes or updates to the data. A good analytics platform that can support that is one thing that we look for. And finally, having a very fast, like even up to this point of like milliseconds, right? Going back to what I said about, we don't have this transactional databases in blockchains. So people write and then they also read back from blockchains after a bit. So having that milliseconds of latency where you can read and provide your production applications from analytics engine is a very powerful advantage we have in blockchains. So we're looking for something which can support this millisecond latency on queries that we care about. We, of course, like looked into a bunch of alternatives out there. Yeah, StarRocks is a great fit for that. We are using StarRocks for some of our like key components on analytics engine. Before we write data into StarRocks and after we read from blockchains, there's a lot of like processing that we do to denormalize, to make some quality controls and fill in the data gaps, clean up all the raw data, decode all the data. We have a Spark-based engine where we do all of that, and then we ultimately write it into StarRocks. Yeah, the whole pipeline is beautiful and it works very well.
Great. So you mentioned several very interesting requirements, right? I think it's critical for the real-time analytics, like the fast ingestion, being able to handle upserts, right? Both updates and deletes, you know, instead of just handling inserts. Query speed, millisecond query latencies, and also supporting joins.
Yeah, joins is another thing that we also wanted here. Yep. So like Prashanth mentioned, right? If one way to avoid joins is to have a denormalized data, you can construct ahead of the time and then write everything in denormalized format. Yeah. But that will just like take up too much of data, and then you cannot really optimize for ad hoc queries that users would come up with. Having this sort of like Snowflake / star schema based approach where we can run joins on the fly, where we can keep less amount of data, and then having good support for faster joins will help ad hoc queries situations a lot. If you are pre-planning all of your queries, that's fine, you can do anything. But if you have this use case of anybody can come in, anybody can write a query on the fly, having the join support is very, very important.
Yep, great. Thank you. So you've been working with StarRocks project for quite a while now. And what's your experience working with the StarRocks project and the community?
We love StarRocks. We love open source, first of all, and we love the fact that StarRocks is one of the very few good databases out there in the open source world, and we love the community. I mean, being a pioneer in a database like StarRocks, you run into issues, right? We are always like constantly pushing StarRocks to its limits in terms of the data loads, in terms of batch loads, like views. We always try like and tinker things that are that maybe people don't expect, like a normal like enterprise database to behave like, because we can read the source code, we can see what it can do, what it cannot do, and we always run into these challenges where with the hacker mindset, right? Where if you are a traditional like enterprise based database, you just don't know, like you're going through this like process of like customer support, engineers, all of that. It's pretty annoying to have this delay. StarRocks being open source and the community being open source and always available on Slack, it's pretty amazing the amount of like support that we can get, not just at the product level, where somebody who has used the product at a practitioner level can come and talk, but also at the deeper engineering level. If you have specific questions about like how to optimize this query, or we have this like node cluster setup, like something is not working, how to optimize that, we can get like this talent of like from across the stack who can come and like understand that and help us with that. That's a pretty delightful experience for us. And also like it feels good, like just contributing and using open source project, you feel like it lives on, right? Your legacy, all the improvements that you're making, all the community, all the effort that you're putting towards this like improving this product, it stays for generations, and you're part of that. That's a pretty rewarding experience as you work on this improving these open source projects. So we love StarRocks for that reason.
Great, glad to hear that. Thank you. Alrighty, so Prashanth, I have one more question for you. For organizations who just started down the path of real-time analytics, what's your suggestion from the data governance standpoint?
Yeah, so just to summarize the whole discussion which we discussed about the 5 key enablers to make real-time analytics. The first one Lee talked about is data culture. Number 2 is education, which is literacy, which I emphasized as well. Next, number 3 is quality data. If you don't have quality data, there's no point in talking about all those things, because the input to all the tools and technology which Anish is working on is mainly about good quality data. That's number 3. Number 4 is about tools and technologies, because you need a great tool, because that's where you bring efficiency, scale, reliability, security, and all those things. So you can't just ignore technology as part of your whole real-time analytics. That's a huge component as well. And the 5th thing, to make sure that things don't go wrong, you need data governance. That's what Lily's question is. So these are the 5 key enablers to make real-time analytics happen. Not just real-time, but generally, in my view, analytics to happen, these are the 5 key components. Now, coming to data governance, you must have heard about this in many places. What's data governance? So in my view, how do you make this happen? The first thing is you need to strike a balance between centralized and decentralized approach. Data governance cannot be top-down, where somebody at the top in the head office starts holding a stick and say that you need to do those kind of things. You need to strike a balance between centralized and decentralized. So how do you make this happen, Prashanth? Centralized is more bureaucratic. Decentralized is all about data democracy and democratization, so on and so forth. How do you strike a balance? You strike a balance by categorizing the data, where I talked about data profiling earlier. By looking at your data, like things like master data and reference data can be part of the centralized setup, whereas the transactional data, such as your purchase orders, invoices, and all this transactional elements, including invoices and payments and remittances, so on and so forth, can be part of this decentralized approach, where you allow the line of business to manage the transactions, and you allow the centralized team to take care of your critical reference and master data, which is sensitive too. So that's one thing. Next, number 2 is implement process, which is, I call it as 3P, which is policies, process, and procedures. So build those things so that everybody knows this is the way we work together. Bringing the teams together. I call it all about the organization structure. I call it as structural, procedural, and the relational stuff, so that people know this is how we work, which is about data custodians, stewards, or data owners, and all those things. And one of the things to make this happen from a technology standpoint is he's having roles that are aligned to the position, which we call it as role-based access control. So that based on the roles, you are able to do this. Hey, you are the data owner of customer master, and for respective views within the customer master, you could use the data stewards to make a particular thing happen, so on and so forth. And how do you make this thing happen? Using controls like role-based access control, role to position mapping, so on and so forth. So in my view, we can talk about a lot of things on data governance, but these are the 3 key building blocks. Strike a balance between centralized and decentralized. Don't think that data governance is always top-down. It has to be bottom-up too. Both of them should come together. It's about striking a balance between data democratization and data consumption or data protection, something like that. So if both of them have to go hand in hand. Then talk about processes, which is about 3 Ps, which I just mentioned, and make you have the right role so that you get to know who is the data steward, who is the data owner, who is the data custodian, so on and so forth, to make things happen. So it's like with data governance, many companies say, oh, it's bureaucratic, it is top down and all those things. True, I agree. But just think for a minute. the brakes in a car are not meant to slow down you. It is meant to give you that kind of speed so that you can go at 150 kilometers per hour, so that if things go wrong, you have the brakes to apply and stop the car. The same thing with data governance. They are not like an inhibitor for your business performance. If managed well, so they can be a great value add as well. So don't look at your data governance team as kind of, oh, these are like policing us, they're controlling us, and so on and so forth. Treat them as your collaborators, as your partners, so that you work together with them.
Great point. Don't hate them. They will actually help you.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Thank you. All right, Anish, final question is for you. Is there anything you would like us to add or improve on in the StarRocks project? Right. This can be for the project or the community, either way. So, any suggestion?
Yeah, I can outline a roadmap for you for the next few years if you want me to. There are so many things that we love in StarRocks, but there are a lot more that we want in StarRocks. I mean, with jokes aside, right? Like, it's a beautiful product, it's a great product, and that's where we feel like we have a voice with the community, a voice with you guys. We need something and we ask you, and then you ship it in the next release. That's what we love about StarRocks. Anything that I think we have been working together for like a few months now already, and I gave you so much feedback, and you already implemented all of that in your new releases. We love that fast iteration, fast interaction that we have with you. There are a couple of I guess maybe one or two things that I care about that I would love to see. I think others would also need. One is more around observability. Like today, when a long running query is more like on the loading side of loading data into StarRocks and stuff like that, if we can have more observability on what is the status of the job, how well are we doing, what is the consumption of resources, I think having more observability into that would help us a lot to optimize our like live loading or batch loading scenarios. Another thing I would say is a separation of compute and storage. I think many other engines have this, and I think StarRocks is also looking into it. But having a separate compute and separate storage would help us plan our costs more efficiently, especially in our case of blockchains where there's a lot of data running at a few petabytes. It's not scalable for us to like add up more and more machines when we have more data. We need to be able to decouple both and then not have to increase compute power just to have more storage. That would be nice for us to have. Those are like more on the product side. But there is a lot more on product that make everything more and more faster, make everything more and more reliable. That's always something that any software product can keep on improving. Community is great. I think in the beginning we had the documentation is a bit of an issue, but these days like documentation is I see that it's again improving more and more. It's a community effort. As people ask more and more questions, I think you are adding that back into the documents. That's helping us a lot too, so that we don't all run into the same problem again. That's great. Yeah, it's a great experience working with StarRocks so far, and we love it.
Great. You know, those are great inputs as well, right? So I'm sure the community is paying attention, the product team is paying attention. So separation of compute and storage has been we're actively working on that, and you hear some good news pretty soon, I think.
When is that going to be live? We can't wait.
I know, it's just always pushing, which is great. So, okay, that's all my questions. I think it has been a great discussion, and I have got a couple of questions on the back end. One actually Tyler just posted here is one of a couple questions he got from the back end. If I want to choose a new RTA system, real-time analytics, which aspects should I pay attention to? Anish, maybe this is a question more for you.
Yeah. Three things come to my mind right off the bat. First one is cost. Real-time analytics, I mean, anybody can do that if you throw enough compute at it and enough storage at it, but at what cost? Do you need like millions of machines to get your query response within like 1 second, and then you run those queries like once a day? That seems to be a very utter waste of resources. So having like a reasonable cost to get RTA is important. You should definitely pay attention to how much your compute costs are going to be, how much your storage costs are going to be. That's a key factor. Second one is the latency itself. What is the trade-off? Like what is that business value that you are getting out by having a real-time analytics engine? And what is the cost of like moving your current systems into RTA? Is it worth the business cost? Many companies think of it as a longer term investment, which is totally true. Like the whole world is moving into like this instant 8-second analysis, right? So everyone wants to get to be faster and faster. So it definitely pays off in the longer term, but in the shorter term, like in the order of priorities you have, in the order of costs you have, you need to look into like, you need to plan it properly. What is the business value that you're getting out? Do we need to move everything today into RTA, or can we move it in a phased approach where we pick up high value scenarios, move them into RTA first, see how they play out, and then move the remaining batch scenarios into RTA? I think that's a good strategy that will play out well. And another thing is just the expertise and operational complexity. If you have a solid engineering team, everything is easy. That's great. But if you don't have, like, who is the provider going to be? What service guarantees are they providing? If you run into an issue, can you get support right away? Or are you blocking your users from accessing the product because of a delay with the provider? You need to look into like the quality of service provider. If it's open source, that's way more helpful because there is always community and you can also look into code. But if it's not open source, like what sort of SLAs are you signing up with your provider is another big factor to look into. But yeah, the key thing is like the trade-off between cost and the output that you expect, the throughput as well as the latency of queries. That is a key, I think, factor.
Okay, great.
In our case, we looked into like BigQuery, for example. BigQuery is great. It costs a lot. When we have a spike in needs, we can scale compute right away, but it costs a lot. The problem is BigQuery never run anything within few milliseconds because it's like this MapReduce style job where they spin up like 1,000 machine node and they scan all the data again and again for every query. They can't reuse data in between queries. So it's just like more expensive, but also a bit worse compared to anything else out there in terms of like the speed of latency of the queries.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question is how to persuade my boss to invest more on RTA. Prashanth, maybe I'll have you to, since you talk to the boss all the time.
It's a great question. You know, like we run into this often about how do you build a compelling use cases for analytics, including real-time analytics. So you know, I'll just go a little bit higher and talk about how do you tell a good story to your manager, because ultimately it's about telling a great story. So it's about the what aspect of it, what you should do to get value out of real-time analytics. So we need to tie that what to your business objectives, to your strategies and the KPIs of the company. You can't just go and straight away say, oh, Uber is doing it, let's do this. Airbnb is doing it. Somebody told, I went to a conference and somebody told data is oil, let's do this. So it doesn't make any sense. So first thing is tie what you are doing to your business strategy, your business goals, and the KPIs the company is tracking. So that tracking is number one. Next, number two, which is about look at what the management needs is about insights. So try to derive those insights, which is valuable to your company. Just give some kind of a situation. Like for example, in my second blog, and which I wrote about the value of the use cases for real-time analytics, and Sanjeev also came. Sanjeev from Moneris, he also came and spoke about the use cases they have for real-time analytics. Where I just said about the impact of real-time analytics, which is where Amazon is using. So Amazon changes the product prices 2.5 million times a day. So that means an average product listed in Amazon changes its prices every 10 minutes. So what does this mean compared to other competitors like Walmart and Best Buy? This is 50 times more compared to what the price change that's happening in Walmart and Best Buy. So what, Prashanth? So what is it Amazon getting out of this by changing prices 50 times? So Amazon says this has helped them boost profits by approximately 25%. So the next number two is about derive those insights for your company, which is tied to your KPIs, the tangible business metrics. Next, number three, what your boss is also looking for is not just kind of insights per se, but also solutions, the recommendations, the third step. So what are the recommendations you have? And also when you talk about recommendation, just map it as part of it. What I typically do for my clients and prospects is the two axis one, which is impact on the y-axis and the complexity of implementation on the x-axis. Do a kind of a 9-blocker one based on a high, medium, low for these three things, and talk about which one to do first, which one to do next, and which one to do as part of your third phase, so on and so forth, to talk about this. So this is what I would do. Overall, tell a story which is relevant for your company so that your boss knows that if he does it, the company would look good, rather than some theoretical stuff about what happened there, what happened here, so on and so forth. So make it very contextual and tell a story. And the story generally sells well if you tie the benefits to financial performance. Real financial performance, nothing sells more effectively than the financial measures.
Great. Anish, I think you've gone through that as well, right? So maybe anything you want to share with us?
I can maybe drop from experience working on fraud, like people like signing up for fake accounts, fake listings, all the things when I was at Airbnb. We had this old batch system where, I mean, we detect fraud every night and then we stop all these logins next day, or we block all these accounts next day. It's good. It's better than nothing. But as you can imagine, all these bad things are on the website live for like 24 hours, which is bad. It's a great like starting experience for us to like try out real-time analytics, where what if we can do all of that? What if we can block all of that in real time? Whenever somebody logs in, whenever somebody signs up, whenever somebody sends a message, if we can score these things and if we can block it right away, let's try it out. And so we started trying out with one small scenario. And then it's very complex effort. It took a lot of time for us, for the engineering team to like five people team to build the infrastructure, to like change the website flows and stuff like that. But when we saw the results, it was like overwhelming. The amount of interactions, like bad interactions on the site, are like basically cut down to like 95% overnight. That's a very, very strong business value. There is a hypothesis around like if you can stop it in real time, it will help users and all. But once we did a prototype and we launched it and saw that, the value was like very clear to the management, and we invested more heavily, like got buy-in from leadership to like basically build a bigger team around like adding it in more places on the website. Ultimately, it became a team of 70 engineers working on like real-time fraud detection while I was there. But yeah, once you see the business value, once it's tied back to how it impacts your end user, how it makes their life better, it's a very, very easy thing for anybody higher up in the chain to make a call.
Great. Awesome. Already, I think we're getting close to the top of the hour. This has been a great discussion, and thank you both, Prashanth and Anish, for your great insight. And for the audience here, we'll share the recording with everyone. And if you have any follow-up question, please let us know. And also, please check out Prashanth's book on Amazon, and also the upcoming book next year in March. And also, don't forget to visit ngram.com, right? Follow them on the next the development of blockchain analytics. Alrighty, thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Okay,
thanks for having us.
see you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Anish.